All right. Good morning. This is County Commissioner Stan Vanderwerf, and I'd like to call to order our Board of Directors meeting for the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments for today on August 11. And what I would like to do is, as we always start off, is establish a quorum. I think the PPACG staff is working on that right now. Do you need a minute to finish that up, or are you ready to go?
Well, we can give it a shot. Well, I'll get started in the room, and then Jess B's got the list of others. Sure. Okay. Okay, so we count 11. I'm going to start with the room first because that's a little bit easier. Obviously, our chair, Commissioner Vanderwerf, Council Member Sharon Thompson, Mayor Don Wilson, Council Members Dave Donaldson and Nancy Hencham, City of Colorado Springs, Mayor John Graham, Manitou Springs, Commissioner Eric Stone, Teller County, and Council Member Yolanda Avila. Those are all in the room. And on the Zoom, I see Commissioner Cammie Bremer, Commissioner Holly Williams, Commissioner Dick Elsner. Okay, and I think that is it for right now. Did we miss anybody as far as voting members? Okay. And a handful of ex officio members and staff and others. So thank you and welcome.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. It sounds like we have a quorum present. And do we have any new people for introductions at this point?
I don't see anybody new.
I don't either. All right. Let's go ahead and then proceed with the, well, Nancy, you have this look on your face like,
Just ready.
oh, just ready to go. Okay, very good. All right, let's go ahead and proceed with item number 2, which is the agenda approval. And hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to review it. And
I would move to approve.
all right, that's been moved and seconded. So at this point, are there any comments or questions on the agenda? Yes, we do have a hand raised, please.
Just one quick reminder, make sure to state your name when making a motion and make sure if you're in the room to use your mic and to turn it on. It's the face with the little lines coming out. So it looks like it's speaking. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the reminder. Very important so that we can have it for the official record. All right, any other questions on the agenda? All right, we've got one request to help find the packet. Maybe if one of the PPACG staff could help Sharon with that. All right. With that in mind, let's go ahead and Sharon's going to get some assistance here. Let's go ahead and proceed with the vote. All those in favor of the agenda say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Oh, thank you. Are there any opposed? All right, hearing none, the agenda is approved. Let's move on to item number 3, public comments and presentations. Do we have any members of the public or have we had any inputs via email from the public?
Nothing via email.
Okay, nothing via email, and I see no hands being raised here in the meeting. Is there anybody online from the public that wishes to speak at this point?
Commissioner, this is Brian Vituli with the City of Colorado Springs Mountain Metropolitan Transit. I just have a brief announcement to make, if that's okay.
Yes, please proceed, Brian.
All right, thank you. Back in June, the third week of June, June 21st through June 30th, we held our public process for our fall service changes. And I just wanted to announce that the changes have been approved and we are moving toward implementing 4 of those changes this fall. And the final item that was approved is our downtown shuttle, which will be implemented probably late April of 2022 or somewhere around Memorial Day. So just wanted to make those announcements, and we're working toward implementing those service improvements. And thanks to the PPRTA approved budget amendment back in May and our American Rescue Plan funds, we're able to implement these new services. So thank you.
Oh, okay, great. That's awesome. And for those of you that did not see it, Council Member Yolanda Avila was raising her hands and shaking them. She's excited about it. So Awesome. Are there any questions or comments about I'm presuming this is increased service. So any comments or questions about the increased service? All right, hearing none. I don't think we have any other public comments, but I'll just give one more opportunity for those online in case there is someone else. All right, hearing none. Let's go to item 3A. This is the 5-year PPACG anniversary recognition. And it looks like we have Ann Werner coming forward and she'll speak from the podium.
Good morning, I'm Barb Watson, HR Manager for PACG.
If you might make sure the mic is turned on and talk into the mic so that it can be recorded and people online can hear it. Thank you.
Hello, it's on. Good morning, I'm Barb Watson, HR Manager for PPACG, and I am here today to recognize Ann Werner for 5 years of service to PPACG since August 16th, 2016. Ann is a valuable member of our military planning program, and she's so enthusiastic about the program. She was, you can come up. I have a few more things to say. She has a lot of community contacts and looks for opportunities for collaboration anytime she can. She was promoted in January to senior military planner, and from February through August, February through July, she served as manager for the program when Paul Rochette started the new manager for the program. Thank you, Ann.
All right, congratulations to Ann.
Thank you. Allow me to just say a few words. I've mentioned to Barb several times, I think Andy as well, that I consider this job a true blessing. I really do. And I've been in the planning, I switched careers about 25 years ago, wasn't environmental, went to planning, to the planning field, and did a lot of what I thought was planning, but it was really code control. And until this job came open and I was the lucky candidate to get it 5 years ago as a joint land use study planner, I finally realized why I went to get my master's in it. This is a true planning job. You get to work in a way that brings value to the whole community. And for me, that's personally especially relevant because I grew up here, been here since 1966, and because my dad was Air Force. So for me, being able to kind of give back to the military community in a way means a lot, because my dad spent 20 very hard years in the Air Force. He was in Korea and Vietnam. So this is kind of part of that for me. So thank you.
Well, congratulations. I would say on behalf of the board and the chair, we'd like to thank you for your service to PPACG, but especially thank you for your service to the community. And your comments were outstanding. It is an honor and a pleasure to serve the community, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yes, thank you so much. Do we have someone else who would like to come up and make a few remarks? Please come on up.
Yes, I'm Ann's boss, but I don't like to use the word boss because I see her as an equal. I've been on the job for 1 month. I could not do this without Ann. And I just want to go beyond recognizing 5 years. I want to recognize quality and dedication. So I just can't say enough positive about Ann. So.
Outstanding. Thank you very much. Does anybody else have comments for Ann? We got some feedback there. Let me back off a little bit on the mic. Any other comments for Ann? All right, very good. Thank you again, Ann, and congratulations. Let's move on to number 4, the consent items. And we have 3 items to act on as a whole. The first one is approval of the minutes from the July 14, 2021 regular meeting. Second one is the summary of the financials. And the third one is the membership appointments for the TAC. All of these items are in the packet. Are there any comments or questions on any of these consent items, or does anybody wish to pull one off so we can discuss it further or in more detail? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent items.
Okay, that's
Second.
been moved and seconded. The
Don
second
Wilson.
is Don Wilson, Mayor of Monument. And any last comments or questions on any of these items? All right. Thank you, Yolanda. I think they knew you, so they've got you down as the person making the motion. All right, let's go ahead and proceed with the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And are there any opposed? All right, hearing none, that passes unanimously as well. Let's move on to item 5. These are our 2 action items where we'll dig deeper. And the first one is the fiscal year 2022-2025 TIP adoption. And we've been through a couple of public hearings on this. I think this is our last public hearing on the TIP adoption. And assuming there are no concerns or issues, we will proceed with a vote today. Is that correct?
We have one big concern, but not related to TIP adoption, but related to Katherine leaving us after today's board meeting.
Oh, no.
But, so John may want to say a few words before Katherine does her pitch, or you want to wait till after, but this is all, we're happy for Katherine.
If you all would be willing, could we perhaps go through the vote and then let's spend some time on the sad news part of this? Okay, let's go ahead and proceed with the discussion about the TIP adoption.
Thanks, Commissioner. All right. Katherine Wenger, Senior Transportation Planner, PPACG. As Commissioner Vanderwerf mentioned, we have brought this item to you over this past several months as a draft or having you release it to the public for their review as well. So we've had multiple iterations of this plan and have made updates based on those recommendations and comments. So at this point, we haven't made any changes since the last month that we brought it to you. So I'll just kind of do a brief summary of what it is, just so everybody knows for the record, and then we'll request the adoption. So this is for our fiscal year 2022 through 2025 Transportation Improvement Program adoption, or our TIP, or short range plan as we also call it. This is for our current one that is for 21 through 24. And so now we're moving into the next fiscal year, which starts actually in July 1. And so we are transitioning to this new one so that we can be in alignment with the statewide version of the STIP. So we developed and made updates over the past several months. And like I said, nothing has changed since the last month that we brought it to you. So all projects and project funds and everything have stayed the same since we last brought it to you. So with that, I will say that the Transportation Advisory Committee and our Community Advisory Committee, or TAC and CAC, both recommend approval of this adoption. And once approved, it will go into effect nearly immediately. We have to forward it on to CDOT, and they've have to make sure that we're in fiscal constraint and everything, but should be effective by the end of the month and will be the active TIP.
Okay, thank you, Katherine. Are there any, this is our last opportunity to provide comments, inputs, or recommended changes before we proceed with the vote. Are there any comments, inputs, or changes at this point from the board? And hearing none, let's go ahead and proceed with, I'll entertain a motion at this point.
So moved. Don Wilson.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second, Eric Stone, Teller County.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Last opportunity for any additional comments, including even if there's a misspelling somewhere, let's bring it out. All right, hearing none. So that would never happen. That's right. All right, I don't hear any comments from anybody. So let's go ahead and proceed with the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And all those opposed say nay. And hearing none, that passes unanimously as well. Thank you for the great work. And let's move on to the second unhappy phase of this.
No, we are happy for Katherine. Come on up, John, but really, really saddened to lose her. She found an awesome professional opportunity to go to work with the Federal Highway Administration in Alaska, of all places. Can't thank her enough for all her just major contributions in working on the TIP and many other transportation projects. You would not have found a misspelled word in the TIP document you just adopted. She's just on top of it all the time and just has been a major contributor. And we're going to miss her dearly. Her last day is Friday of next week, I think,
Friday,
August 20th. Yeah, sorry, John, big loss, but words that you want to share?
I really have nothing more to add other than let the misspellings begin with her departure. One, and number two, Katherine, just you deserve, I know it makes you uncomfortable, but you deserve to have it said in front of the board and everyone else, you're leaving us far better than you found us. So for those of you who don't remember what things were like a few years ago, there was a paper tip document that you sort of had to get your jeweler's monocle on to actually be able to read. She's led us into the online and electric tip. So again, we can't thank you enough for everything you've done for us over the last couple of years. So you're going to be severely missed. And Alaska is going to get a little warmer now, and it's not global warming.
Oh.
I would just like to say, I really appreciate Katherine in terms of putting things in layman's language and understanding that we don't do this for a living and making it very simple to work with your documents and ask you questions and things and being very approachable. So thank you very much for doing that for us.
Outstanding. Are there any other comments for Katherine? Okay, I'll just also, on behalf of myself and the board, express our appreciation for the work that you've done for PPACG. And again, also, as I mentioned earlier, your work on behalf of the community. You will be missed. You've done great work here. You've presented many items to the board successfully, I might add, and we appreciate that great work. And this is Alaska's game. But I can't think of a more fun and exciting place to move to than Alaska. That's an amazingly beautiful place. So we wish you the best in Alaska, and we hope that's a very successful career move for you, Katherine. And thank you again for your service here. All right. Thank you very much. Let's move on then now to 5B. And this is the amendment for moving forward the 2045 Pikes Peak Area Regional Transportation Plan.
Mark Northrup, I believe, is online, our senior transportation planner, and he's going to handle that one. Mark?
Good morning, everyone. Mark Northrup, Senior Transportation Planner at PPACG. So today I'll be asking you to release the plan amendment to the Moving Forward 2045 plan for public comment. First, though, I want to provide you with an overview of the plan amendment. Jessica, can you scroll to the amendment schedule, please? So the process for amending the plan began in the spring when it was determined that a project being developed by the City of Colorado Springs, the US 24 Peterson Road Interchange Project, would need to be incorporated into the plan. With the need to amend the plan, staff issued a call for amendments in April. Staff received 11 new project proposals and 1 request for change to an existing program. The total request in new funding came to approximately $125.3 million. In terms of new projects, there were 2 project proposals by Colorado Springs, one including the US 24 Peterson Road Interchange Project at a cost of $16.5 million. There's also the Old Ranch Road Voyager Parkway to Kettle Creek project at a cost of $9.5 million. There were 2 project proposals by El Paso County. They included Judge Orr Bluegill Drive intersection realignment project at $10 million and a Woodman Road State Highway 21 to State Highway 24 at a cost of $50 million. There are 2 projects proposed by Monument. They included Old Denver Road, Santa Fe Avenue to West Baptist Road at a cost of $15 million and State Highway 105, 2nd Street to the railroad at a cost of $10 million. There are also 4 projects proposed by Manitou Springs. They included East Manitou Avenue pedestrian and drainage improvements at a cost of $1.7 million, El Paso Boulevard pedestrian and drainage improvements at a cost of $1.9 million, Lovers Lane and Creek Walk Trail pedestrian and mobility improvements at a cost of $1.3 million, and a Creek Walk Trail project at a cost of approximately $9.4 million. There is also a rail station design construction project proposed by CDOT at a cost of $5 million. MMT agreed to reduce their bus stop amenity program by $5 million to accommodate the rail station project and keep the plan fiscally constrained. In addition to the new projects, there were text modification requests by PPACG staff and CDOT. This included incorporating updated transit safety performance measures and targets from MMT's Public Transit Agency Safety Plan and incorporating front range passenger rail language into the plan. During the call for amendments, staff developed a plan amendment schedule and revised financial plan estimates using updated PPRTA estimates, as well as CDOT's program distribution document. it was determined that 516 million in additional local, state, and federal funding would be available for new projects. And 93 million of this additional funds needs to be used for transit. Staff held a workshop with TAC members to discuss the plan amendment schedule, the revised financial plan estimates, and project proposals. And the TAC acted on the schedule and revised financial plan estimates at their June meeting. So over the past several months, staff and our regional partners have developed a plan amendment document that outlines the key details of the plan amendment and provides further analysis of the projects that I mentioned earlier. The document also provides supportive information, including the formal project and text requests by the sponsors. The plan amendment document is considered an extension of the 2045 RTP and is available for review and comment by you, the other PPACG committees, and the public. The amendment document was provided to the TAC and CAC as information last month. In terms of the analysis performed on the new projects, with the revised financial plan estimates calculated by staff, all the proposed projects can be incorporated into the plan without the need to modify those projects already in the plan, and the plan will maintain fiscal constraint. In terms of environmental justice, something that's required as part of our planning process, staff determined as a group the 2045 projects do not disproportionately impact federally protected classes and have the same potential impact, both to help and hurt, on minority and low income concentrated areas as that of the entire region. In terms of modeling, staff determined that the model did not need to be run for this amendment, given the minimal impact of the new capacity projects. Also, since the PPACG region is in attainment for criteria air pollutants, air quality model runs did not need to be made for this amendment. So in terms of next steps, after you release the plan amendment for public comment today, a public hearing on the proposed plan amendment will be held at the board meeting next month. The plan amendment will then go to the TAC and CAC later in September for recommendation, with you scheduled to take action on the plan amendment at the October meeting. And each committee will be provided with any public comments received during the public comment period and during the public hearing. So that concludes my presentation on the plan amendment. I now ask you to release the amendment for public comment. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation, Mark. And do we have any comments on this moving forward 2045 Pikes Peak Area Regional Transportation Plan? And I know Sharon, I think you may have some input.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up to the whole group some of the comments that I kind of, things I kind of questioned when we had the pre-meeting on Friday. You guys are all in that in-between space. Hopefully I'll have eye surgery in the next 6 weeks and I'll get everybody into focus. Anyways, it just is interesting to me, the kind of process we're going through with the rail station design and construction being added onto this. And I know John came up and gave a really good explanation on Friday, and if you want to come up and continue that. But so we're in the process of Mountain Metro coordinating a study to decide, where the station would be, right? And then, and that's been given a certain amount of money, and it hasn't been decided where it's going to be yet. And all along, now we're putting $5 million, which to me is a lot of money, towards the project design, planning, design, and construction. And it's my understanding that a Senate bill, so the Senate bill or a state or representative bill, Senate bill was passed ordering this to form a district, taxing district to pay for this. So we haven't had that on the ballot yet to even see if this passes. And yet we're spending money and setting a bunch of money aside for that. And when I've questioned quality of life issues on communities that this train will be going through, which Fountain is one of them, I've been told continuously that that study is later when we're further along in the process. But yet we continue to spend and set money aside in our long range plans for this, when it hasn't even been passed by the voters to have this as a taxing entity. Are we saying that if we're going to go ahead, whether this goes on the ballot or not, and whether it fails or passes on the ballot, we're just going to keep spending money on it? And I think that's a very valid question, because people see projects like this spending money, planning, and I know we have to do that. But I think the Senate bill was very clear that this has to be a ballot measure passed not only by El Paso County, but Pueblo County, Douglas County possibly. I'm not sure how the counties line up.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, let me take the specific question now. I think SB 1238 was the front range passenger rail bill. And that was worded in such a way that the district is created in the MPO areas of certain counties, a 5-mile from the center line of I-25 in certain counties, and in the entirety of other counties. The entirety counties, I believe, is Douglas and, oh no, not Denver and the folks up north. So those are full counties in that. So when that item gets put on the ballot, only the voting precincts that fall within that boundary will be voting on it. So you are correct in that it is not anything that's been passed yet. All that was created is the district, the representation of that district, and the process by which they can put an item on the ballot. And again, that item would only appear within those precincts within the boundary.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. I think there's, yes, go ahead, Andy.
Well, I was gonna say, I don't know if, we talked about a timing issue as well on Friday at the workshop about the need for a station location, how this ties in with the Southwest Chief service that Amtrak is looking at planning as well. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that a little bit, or John?
Sure, if you want. Yeah, okay. Mr. Chair, members of the board. So the long range plan is sort of getting us ready for things. If things are in the long range plan that says somewhere within between now and 2045, we may do that. However, it is not a guarantee that anything in the plan will actually get constructed. So when you say set aside money, you're absolutely correct. That's the way we need to look at this. Nothing in this plan is actually authorizing the spending of any funding. It's just merely setting it aside. As far as the front range passenger rail, you are correct in that it would perhaps be premature to set aside a funds for a station on that. However, given the progress that's been made on the Southwest Chief, which is through car service, I believe it's the Southwest Chief itself runs from Chicago down to San Diego. Nobody bet money on that in the bar, but pretty sure that's the thing. It cuts the corner of Colorado at La Junta, and the through car service. And again, I'm by no means a giant rail expert, but my understanding of a through car service is that when the Amtrak train stops in La Junta, they decouple the engine, it runs up to Pueblo, they grab a passenger car and they bring it back. When Amtrak was penciling this all out, Amtrak says, yeah, we can make Pueblo work, but it would sure work a lot better if we could go all the way to Colorado Springs. So Amtrak, on sort of their wish list in federal funding bills, has said that Colorado and this particular project is one of their priorities that they'd like to see do and have the funding for. So from our position, it's not just what may or may not happen in the next 30 or 40 years on front range passenger rail, but rather that the Southwest Chief is a more intimate, oh, I think I used that word correctly, thing that would happen. And for the region to take advantage of that, that would need to be something that is done. City of Colorado Springs, and I know Brian Vituli is on the line, came through this process, received funding through the Multimodal Options Fund to do a station location study. And I think they're in the consultant selection process right now. That study, when completed, will sort of identify where the station would go and how it would operate. But I think the purpose of that is to use it for all things rail, including the Southwest Chief and front range passenger rail, if in the future it does get passed. So did that answer?
Well,
You know, that's a good explanation, but I think it's in our perusal to have a discussion of where we're laying millions of dollars aside with something that has not gone to the voters to see if they want to approve it. And what I'm kind of hearing between the lines is it doesn't matter if the voters approve it or not, that Amtrak wants it. And so this is going to go through. And so are we in one of those, if we build it, they will come situations? And setting aside the money for that. And I know, I'm just asking the questions that I'm hearing the people ask me.
no, and if I
because
might,
There's a lot of concerns for a lot of money out there.
to perhaps reiterate the question, I don't think we would want to spend money on a train station, on a rail station, if there's not going to be a rail coming through to use it. So this does come, I think, Andy, to your question about timing. And I think what we're talking about is there are two potential opportunities. One which is driven by the success of a future ballot measure that is yet to be determined, and there's a possibility there. And the second one is this Southwest Chief Amtrak service. So the first one's going to be what it's going to be. The second one, do we have a real commitment from Southwest, or is this just kind of discussions at present?
I don't know the correct answer to that, so I don't feel comfortable. My understanding is that the Amtrak folks in the Front Range Passenger Rail Southwest Chief meetings that I've been in have indicated that this is a commitment on their part, and they would be providing funding for the line as a match to any federal dollars that they received through the infrastructure bill.
Yeah.
But
And maybe there's another way to kind of couch this question. Does Southwest Chief or I'll just use Amtrak. Does Amtrak need some kind of commitment from a community that helps them make a decision to commit or not? Because this could kind of be like a reverse conversation as well. And then that might be kind of this component of we have to be able to express to Amtrak a commitment.
Right.
But then in order for us to spend any money, for it to not be a waste of money, we would need to not spend that money until Amtrak, no kidding, goes forward.
yeah, and I think
So there's timing issues here.
my apologies, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
At this point, I think the way we've been viewing this a lot is, again, something that the city of Colorado Springs, again, they're the ones sponsoring the station plan, the station location study, and they brought that through, and they are the sponsor. As well as when we were going through this amendment process, they had stepped up and said, we're going to remove some funds from our stop location allocation and move it over here. So to some extent, at some point, when projects are being done by jurisdictions, we just need to put them in, and I have no say in the sort of the matter. Sometimes when something's regional, it's more of a discussion. So I don't know to what point, if Brian, you're comfortable saying how much of this is being driven by the city of Colorado Springs, given that the location would be within your boundary.
Well, I just want to make it clear, I'm not worried about the location. I don't care where the train station goes, I just want to make sure that, I know it's going to go in the plan, it's going to pass. But I think we need to have these conversations when we're putting large chunks of money into something, when it kind of seems like potentially the process is a little off.
Right. I mean, I think it's a fair comment. We don't want to spend $5 million if there's never going to be a need for it. And it's hard to know at this point whether there will or will not be a need. I know that Commissioner Williams has her hand up, and I'll let her speak in just a moment. But maybe there's a way to put some form of word caveat into this section that kind of makes a proper note of the sense of timing that we have a concern about. So it allows the document to go forward. It allows the document to still stay as it is, but we express some type of timing, issue here. And as you all know, what we're doing is we're going to be voting today on whether to release this for public comment or not. So there will be future opportunities for us to weigh back in, because we're waiting for that public comment. We'll be waiting for the committees and PPACG to provide input, and then that will come back to the board. So maybe there's some kind of words that we can add to this that would be an expression of our interest about making sure we don't invest in something that ends up being useless.
Sure. And one somewhat related comment, I think, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, but this would amend the long-range plan that goes out to the year 2045 for projects we think we need between now and 2045. For it to be authorized where MMT could start spending that money, it needs to go in the tip that you just adopted with Catherine's previous item. So this doesn't, I mean, it plans that we're going to need it, and we think this is the ballpark figure that we think would be needed, but it does not authorize the spending of that money yet. Is that
Yes.
correct?
So I know that council member here wants to ask a question, but I see that Commissioner Williams has her hand up. So let's give Commissioner Williams an opportunity to speak at this point.
Well, I guess I would just agree with Andy that it's the money is not spent until we approve it to spend it like we just did in the previous issue that we just did. So what I think is, the Front Range rail definitely has to go to the ballot. I think they've, depending on what year they've set it up for, I honestly don't know if it would win or lose. It will probably lose in El Paso County, but it would probably win in Denver and Boulder. So it's really kind of an unfortunate situation for us on the Front Range rail, but I think we have to have the money there so that when they say, yeah, we're ready to go, if this is going to be something that comes upon us anyway, because of the federal or the state government, we need to make sure that future boards have the ability to do this. So I agree with Sharon. I agree with Stan, and I agree, I think it does need to be in there though, just in case.
Great. Are there any other comments? Do you see? Oh, okay. I don't see that from this side, so my apologies. Thanks for letting me know. Brian, you have some comments?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Vanderwerf. This is Brian Vituli again with the City of Colorado Springs Mountain Metropolitan Transit. And I just wanted to get to your comment, Commissioner, about local commitment to this. The City of Colorado Springs agreed to conduct this rail station location study. It was probably a little over a year ago as part of the Southwest Chief and Front Range Passenger Rail Commission meetings, where it was brought up that Pueblo was way ahead of us with their station planning. And then working with PPACG, we were able to get an additional allocation of Transportation Alternatives Program dollars to conduct this study. So this shows our local commitment to this project. And as John said, Southwest Chief is a more current issue that we need to deal with, and it's much more current than Front Range Passenger Rail. But Amtrak does seem serious to add this additional segment up to Colorado Springs, and I think it would be a huge benefit to the region. And they are looking to serve population centers. So Pueblo and Colorado Springs makes sense for that. And so we're, as John also mentioned, that we're about ready to select a consultant team to start that project, and hopefully we'll kick that off either later in September or sometime in October. And we plan to have a full public process, because there will be a lot to consider, where the station is located and how it fits into the community, how it connects with our regional transit system, with Mountain Metro Transit serving it, and how it basically just fits into the community and how it looks and is designed. So that is really the only money currently that is going to be spent. But in order to be part of the game, and we need to play along, and this is our local commitment, and the City of Colorado Springs is serious about this commitment, and that's why we're conducting this study.
Right. If I might, I'll just offer kind of along the lines of my suggestion, maybe some addition of words, since it was brought by some board members. And I'll just offer the words and then we can have a conversation about whether those sound viable or not, or if they need to be modified or not. But basically leaving, oh, Nancy, did you have anything? Oh, okay. So leaving the this project title and description exactly as is, but adding a sentence that says final approval to spend would be via addition to the tip, which I think is a statement of fact. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So it just provides clarity for maybe those that might not know that, there is a process we would have to go through. We would have to have a discussion about a tip amendment in order to actually spend the dollars. I think I've heard that expressed, and I think that is true. So if there's no objection, maybe adding a sentence like this can accommodate the comments that have been brought forward on this topic. So I'll just ask, since Sharon brought those comments forward, would you find a sentence added at the end of the words in this section? Would you find this sentence to be adequate to express your concerns?
Well, I don't know if it's necessary. I appreciate the try. I just don't think it's necessary because that's obviously the process we already have. It has to get added to the tip to spend the money. So it just would be kind of redundant. I don't know if we need to add anything to the sentence at all. I just think it's worth a discussion of, are we in the correct order of things being done? And honestly, I think if you're looking 20 years out, $5 million isn't going to be the way things are going up right now. $5 million isn't going to be a drop in the bucket by then, unfortunately. But, I definitely think that this is money that should not be spent unless the ballot measure passes. I don't know if that's, but if the Amtrak thing is different than this, then I understand it needs to be a commitment from the community. I just think it's a discussion that we need to have about the process that's going on, the money that's being spent and set aside, and the fact that we need to be willing to move it around if things change in the next few years. And we need to be sure we're including everything. We're having these huge discussions about greenhouse gas emissions. You're going to be running a lot more trains through my community. That is definitely going to affect the quality of life. People are going to be sitting in their cars longer. They're going to be waiting on trains. And, we already have backups on I-25 because of the trains sometimes, especially if they decide to stop on the tracks for an hour and block 2 intersections through the south end of town. That's a quality of life issue, and it becomes an equity issue also because of the populations that live in that area. I think those are things that need to come up in these conversations before we keep making commitments, and those issues I do not feel have been adequately addressed yet in my community. And that's who I'm here to represent, not only the region, but I'm here to represent my community. And we have people trying to get home from work and they're sitting by stopped trains for a long time. If you're not seeing that on a daily basis in your community, then that's good, but we are. And so I think that needs to be addressed in this entire process. And if y'all want to set money aside and come build some overpasses, we'd be more than happy to let you do that. But so I just want to see those issues being addressed. Don't push us into electric vehicles if you're going to be sitting trains in our community, that we are sitting at the thing and we're not able to get home and we're running out of electric or gas or whatever. And it's just affecting our quality of life. So let's start addressing those issues.
Okay, that's a great set of comments. And that really, if you will, I think should be part of the planning process, because I don't know what this may look like in the end of this, whether there's going to be a lot more train on the rail or whether there'll be just maybe a minimal increase. But at some level, it could potentially have a great impact on Fountain, depending on how this plays out. So I think what I'd like to do at this point is make sure that we have a commitment from PPACG, our transportation planners and the team, to make sure that Sharon's point is part of our planning process. Because we don't want to inadvertently harm one community for the betterment of the rest of the community. We want to always be a team and always figure out how we can address these potential secondary impacts and so forth. So do we have a commitment from the PPACG on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it'd be a really good conversation that we can bring up with the TAC members and look at it more holistically and looking at rail roadway separations. Absolutely. That should be part of the planning process. So yeah, I appreciate the feedback.
Okay, great. Let's make sure that that is specifically
Yep.
thought through. And Council Member Henjum, you had your hand up. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Councilmember Thompson, for your comments and agree. I think we do need to pay attention to the impacts in all parts of the community. So thank you for bringing that up. And I agree that we should make sure that's part of our planning. Regards to the additional comments, the only reason I would see that maybe we want to consider them is because it is going out for public comment and the public might not be fully aware of our process. We may not feel like it's necessary on the inside of things, but if the public's going to be commenting and that helps make it clear, why not put it in there? Even if it's a little redundant, I would say it would be fine from my perspective.
I appreciate that comment, and considering that, maybe to some members of our public, there could be some sensitivity on this, having that sentence in there could provide that clarity that might allow those that have some sensitivity to it to perhaps not object at this time to this section, because there is a process that has to go through before final approval is made. Do we have a comment? Did you have your hand raised, Councilman?
No.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought I saw.
Okay.
Thank
so
you.
Nancy, I appreciate your comment. Thank you. It is a great clarification. So yeah, let's just stick it in there. That's fine.
Okay, so let's go ahead. Let me propose it again to add the words final approval to spend would be via addition to the tip. And now let's have a conversation if we want to amend those. This would be an amendment to this motion. Mr. Stone, did you have comment? Or are you just getting ready to make a motion? Oh, okay, very good. All right. Are there any other comments from anybody online with regard to this? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion, which would be a motion with an amendment to add these words.
Mr. Chairman, Eric Stone, Teller County, I would move to approve moving forward 2045 Pikes Peak Regional Transportation Plan forward for public release and comment as amended, as suggested by Councilperson Thompson.
Okay, great. Do we have a second?
And this is Councilmember Donaldson. I'll second the motion.
Thank you very much. Last opportunity for comments or questions with regard to the motion to include the amendment. All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? And I see some thumbs up out there. And thank you very much, Commissioner Bremer, for the visual vote instead of the verbal vote. And just one last point, opportunity. Anybody opposed? All right, that passes as well. Thank you very much. I appreciate bringing the topic up. And I think actually having the words in there to Councilmember Henjum's comments, I think will be helpful for the public to kind of know the stage at which those words are presented. At this point, now it's time for us to go to item number 6, and this is information items. We're starting off with 6A, the status of greenhouse gas emissions rulemaking.
Don't wander too far, John. I'll kick it off and then you can fill in the details. We just wanted to put this on, really don't have specifics to share yet about the state's rulemaking process on greenhouse gas / vehicle miles reduction efforts. They're coming out, we think, on Friday, this coming Friday, the draft rules, and that would open a 60-day public comment period that would close October 12th, if my math is right. So John's been digging into it with phone calls and meetings on a daily basis or a couple times a day basis with CDOT and others that have been part of the stakeholder process. So still waiting with bated breath to see what's in the details. But John, anything you want to fill in?
Mr. Chair, members of the board. Yeah, I'm not sure that I have too much more to add other than, again, the rule will be released on Friday. I do know that, and again, if Commissioner Hickey is on the line, she knows far better than I do, but I believe they're trying to take the show on the road, so to speak, and have 4 or 5 different public hearings in actual locations instead of doing them all virtually, Delta variant notwithstanding. So I believe that's the plan. So you will have an opportunity to sort of weigh in. Once we get the rules, we'll try to do an analysis and send something out. So you're not just handed a document and trying to figure out what the impact is. So all I can say is, one, there will be changes to the way we do our project selection. We just hope that there is still some sort of choice at the end of the day, and that is yet to be seen. And then finally, timing in life is everything. And unfortunately, we had 17, 18 days of poor air quality. So that makes it even more difficult in the term of public discussion for me to say things like, well, these things, other things are as important and we have to do these things. Again, the timing is not bad. Had we had blue skies and good breathing weather during this process, perhaps people would be a little more amenable to compromise. But again, the timing has been awful on our part as far as the fires that have happened that have created poor air quality. So I'm not sure I have anything meaningful else to say, but happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Are there any questions for John at this point? I have a couple. I'll hold those in reserve in case there's any others. Yes, Councilman Donaldson.
John, at the work session, we mentioned trying to have kind of a compensation for the greenhouse gases, the smoke that's blowing in here from other states. Is there, and this is only a few days later, but has there been any movement on that?
I'll let Andy answer that question because there's actually two separate things. There's the federal determination, and that's where you get to see if you can get credit for the smoke versus this is a state rule on the greenhouse gas. But I think your question is more aligned with the thing Andy's been watching.
Sure, and I appreciate the question. I was going to bring this up later in the meeting, but now's a good time, I think, to just chat about it briefly as well. But we've been tracking our ozone levels within the region. We get reports from the state, from CDPHE, on what's happening as far as the monitors that we have throughout our region and throughout the whole state. Last summer, we had a pretty bad summer because we had the 3 largest wildfires in state history in Colorado last summer. So those numbers pushed us over the federal EPA limits for ozone within our region. But we thought, and in conversations with the state, they verified this, that we had a really, really good case to make that we could get those calculations excluded last year because of exceptional events that they're allowed to be excluded per EPA if they sign off on it. So that process has sort of been bumping along. It's pretty slow, so don't have anything really to update from last week or even from conversations we had about this a couple of months ago. It's still kind of going through the process. The challenge this year, and I've got the numbers in front of me that show just the ozone readings that we've seen this summer through the month of July, they've been just horrible. And it's not in-state fires, thankfully, this time, but it's out-of-state fires and even fire smoke coming down from Canada. So our concern is that on the ozone front, that is one of the 6 pollutants that EPA regulates. They don't regulate greenhouse gas emissions at this point, but ozone they do. And there's enough really bad readings that could push us over the ozone limit so we could end up in non-attainment for that pollutant, just like the North Front Range and the Denver region are as well. So kind of too soon to tell if we're going to be able to get some special permission or exclusion of the readings that we've seen so far this summer. My gut tells me probably not, but I think we need to kind of partner with others, with other regions within the state, with other states out west that are impacted by the same dynamic, and really try to figure out how we can move forward with this.
And Mr. Chair, if I could just make one quick distinction or clarification. What Andy's talking about is the federal rules.
Mm-hmm.
So if we are not within compliance or attainment of the federal rules, we get a whole bunch of additional rules that we have to comply with as part of our planning process. What the GHG rule that's coming through the state, that is a separate rule. While it references as a trigger, if you are in federal non-compliance, these things, additional things happen to you. The state rule, even if you are in attainment and in compliance, there are still things that we will be required to do. And that's sort of that discussion. So there's really 2 separate discussions going on. And I just wanted to make sure we had that distinction.
Yes, Council Member Henson.
Yeah, so Look, I appreciate the concern about adding on a lot of regulations and I really do. And I think it's something we have to be thinking about. What I would also invite us to really remember, however, is that it's all connected. You know, the environment, the fact that we have fires that we have has to do with years and years and years of fossil fuel use. And this may be controversial. I don't know. Some people may violently disagree with me, but it is all connected. And it is all related to our climate and the climate changes that we're experiencing. We're in it now. And I think we have to be thinking about what are the things that we want and need to do to address this, whether it's regulated or not. What are we doing to adapt and to continue to try to manage our climate?
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, Sharon, go ahead.
I think it's very important to stay at the conversation this table, to do what we can to keep our air quality, for our kids. A lot of us grew up in very smoggy areas and we understand the importance of it. However, I think that they have been done a certain way for a number of years and where certain events were excluded, and to suddenly decide to include those events, the entire Western America practically is going to be out of EPA compliance. And I think we just need to be very careful of what we choose, and whatever we can do, Andy, to support you, because I think our community, our region has been compliant, has worked very hard to come into compliance and maintain compliance. And there's other areas in Colorado that haven't worked that hard to come into compliance and received a lot of money for it. And they're still not in compliance. And so we cannot be responsible for what's going on up in their area when we've been responsible for what's been going on in our area. One of the biggest things we can do is people with maintaining the forest locally, so we can keep the undergrowth, take care of your home, and we can keep, do what we can to control our area. But I agree that what we need to do to stay into compliance and kind of question where we are and how we can do that, Andy, I hope we can, if there's any way we can support you, because if fire events have been excluded in the past, we have no control over how they fight fires in California, how they prevent fires in California. That's a whole, having lived in California, that's a whole discussion we could have. Things that weren't done for the past 30 years there that are contributing to this event. So, yeah.
Yes, Commissioner Stone.
Yeah, I'd just like to vigorously agree with Councilperson Thompson's statements that we just need to be really careful that we all want to achieve the same goal, which is good air quality. That's a common goal for everyone. However, forest health in Teller County, since the Hayman fire, one of the big things that we've done in Teller County is starting with actually Commissioner Jim Ignatius, is to start a very vigorous mitigation and fire mitigation program within Teller County to prevent another Hayman, potentially prevent, another Waldo, so that, we can keep small fires small before they get really, really big. What's happening in the Northwest right now has really nothing to do with the mitigation efforts that we make here in Colorado, much less the mitigation efforts that are happening in Northwest Colorado. These are all separate from each other, although in Colorado, they're somewhat connected. On a federal level with national forests, they're somewhat connected. But going over here to transportation or other issues about how we heat our homes or businesses, or how we move goods and services and people are actually, I think, a separate consideration when we're talking about cataclysmic events like forest fires. Those are really directly related to forest health, which is a much, much bigger question, much bigger issue to be tacked on to thinking that we're somehow going to affect forest fires in California. So just, I agree with, again, with Ms. Thompson, and just want to make sure we keep things in perspective. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, John, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I might, and again, I just want to reiterate that, again, we have the federal process, which is where we talk about getting the forest fire events excluded. That's a run through the EPA, and that all happens over here. While on the other hand, we have the state rule, which again is not ozone, is greenhouse gas, and that is specifically guided towards vehicle miles traveled and vehicle hours traveled. So that's a sort of a completely different thing. I just mentioned it because, again, if you're in non-attainment on the federal side, that will trigger things within the state bill. However, the state rulemaking, again, is looking at things as far as how to reduce people's travel patterns. And again, that is devoid of any of this other fire sort of discussion from that point, because they're trying to measure greenhouse gas, which is very difficult to do. They can trace some of the trace elements. So instead, they're using as a proxy vehicle miles traveled. And I think it's important because it's taken away the last 8 months of my life in these discussions, as well as I'm sure I'm dying much earlier now than I would have before, is that as we're representing you, we are saying, yes, we see that there is a need for change. Everybody wants clean air, but there is no direct connection between trying to stop building roads or not building certain roads and cleaning the air. Because all that happens is people continue to travel. They travel a smaller network that is not appropriate for that amount of travel. And so therefore, people are stuck idling, which creates more greenhouse gases. So that's the approach we've been taking. We're saying it doesn't, we're okay with some change. We're okay with you saying we'd like to see some mitigation, a travel reduction program that's voluntary, more bike lanes, more transit, those sorts of things. We're okay with, but don't take all the money and get rid of capacity building projects, because there are capacity projects that actually can improve the greenhouse gas problem. And that's the approach we've been taking. We've been trying to be very reasonable. Unfortunately, again, like I said, people don't want to hear, they sort of shut down, say all roads are bad and the air quality is terrible. And we've had 17 days. So my, I think, very reasonable approach has not gotten as far as I think it should have. So I'm just letting you know, as the rule gets released, we're not starting from a favorable position of people understanding when road construction or capacity projects are actually a positive thing.
Councilmember
Yeah,
Henson.
look, I just really want to go on record as I don't disagree with anything you've said, and I'm not anti-road projects. I'm not anti anything that we're doing here. I just want to remind us that in the big picture, in the big scheme of things, what happens in Taiwan impacts what happens in Colorado. I mean, the planet is connected, and every action we have, the butterfly wing, right? You all have heard that analogy. So I just want to remind us that it's all connected.
Yep, and we agree. And like I said, we're not trying to not do anything. We want to comply. We just want to be able to do some things. And again, I will remind everybody that this region was in non-attainment, then we were in maintenance, and then as of our last bill, we are now in attainment. So our numbers are going the correct direction. We are doing the things that we're supposed to be doing. But again, this is a statewide problem, like you say, we're all connected, statewide problem. And then when it got passed at the legislature to fix it, they are applying a one size fits all for a problem that might not necessarily, gotta be careful what I say here, be generated within this region.
Councilmember Thompson, I think you had a comment.
John, I just appreciate your comments for getting us back online, but I think it is, as Nancy's saying, it is an overall thing. Like, you can't just discuss greenhouse gas and not discuss the whole picture. So I think I'm really thrilled we're having some discussions like this, because, you know, sometimes we just kind of gloss over these things and vote on them. I think it's very, very important. And I think that's why we've pushed for some projects, you know, having taken me almost an hour yesterday to get to Fountain from Garden of the Gods, or Monday, you know, because the MAMSIT project isn't done. So our emergency vehicles couldn't get off the road. So therefore, you know, everybody had to go down to one lane and on both sides of the freeway. If we'd had that project completed, it would have flowed along very easily. So I am concerned because there was some talk about projects being drilled back with this bill, with this greenhouse gas emissions, that the air quality control team, whatever they are, would have the authority to say, we don't think that meets, you know, even though it might be a project that's needed, like widening down in Fountain so we can get our vehicles off the freeway when there's an accident to the shoulder, they would have the authority to say, we don't think that meets the criteria. And so I think it's very good we have these conversations, because we need to be able to say, yes, we understand that's an important part of the project, but reality needs to be in here also, that we have a lot of people that need to move around as efficiently as we can.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? I have some comments as well, but I'm reserving those.
Just one brief clarification. Thankfully, the committee of jurisdiction, if you will, for this is going to be the Transportation Commission, the State Commission, which Lisa Hickey represents our region, not
Right.
the Air Quality Control Commission. That's not a.
But it wasn't that way at the
value
beginning.
Yes, I think that's good because CDOT and the TC, they understand the transportation implications and VMT reduction efforts and things like that. So I think that part is positive.
Great. For the record, some of you may be aware of this, but in our board meeting for the Board of County Commissioners yesterday, I asked the state of California to manage their forests. I am particularly upset about this. I'm going to make the point that I think Council Member Hengen's point is well taken. This is a holistic approach, right? But what that also means is we shouldn't be punishing ourselves because somebody else is causing a huge problem. We have to go to the source of those problems and ask those people that have authority to deal with that issue, to deal with the issue. And California has failed to manage its forests for decades. And I'll tell you what, we theoretically have a place. Now, I'm not saying we're here today, but we theoretically could foresee a failure to comply with EPA requirements on the Colorado Front Range. And we could theoretically turn off our economy and stop driving cars and still fail to meet requirements because somebody else is causing a big problem. Now, that's not what we have today, but in theory, that could happen. And I'll also make a point that China is a massive violator of this as well. We have pollution that comes from China that travels over the United States. Some of it is in heavy, heavy particulate matter, and other is in greenhouse gases. And they've been building a new coal-fired power plant every week up through 2019. I think 2020 changed things. But up through the end of 2019, they were adding a new coal-fired power plant every week in China. And so if this is to be treated in a holistic way, then the federal government needs to weigh in and force changes in China somehow, some way, right? And the federal government also needs to ask those that fail to manage their forests to properly manage their forests. Otherwise, we get into a place where we're just going to harm ourselves because of somebody else's failure to do their job. And I think the reverse would be also true, right? If we were a gigantic producer of pollution and our pollution were to travel eastward and cause failures in Virginia for their air quality, we should be held accountable for that. So I deeply believe that pollution coming from other places needs to be discounted in the calculations for how we address air quality in our local area. And I also believe that the federal government needs to step up and push on these other areas and get them to do their job. Otherwise, we're just going to punish ourselves for, I think, no reason. Commissioner Stone.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Agree with nearly all your comments. Just want to make sure, as we're pointing fingers at where the source of the problem is, last year we were the source of the problem. The East Troublesome Fire in the northern part of the state, we contributed to poor air quality all over the Midwest. And really the responsibility for forest health falls on the United States Forest Service as a federal agency. And that's really where we need to be focusing the pressure as local governments, as state government, is to really pressure the Forest Service to be more proactive about logging for health rather than just leaving alone, because as we witnessed with our own pine beetle scourge that took out just millions of acres of lodgepole pines and now moving into other types of trees in Colorado, that it created literally just a tinderbox that we saw with the East Troublesome fire. And it's not going to end until something on the federal level changes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. I appreciate that comment very much. And for everyone's benefit here, but maybe there's something that we can do more in PPACG about this. 2 weeks ago, I went to the American Defense Communities Conference. And at that meeting, I was introduced to the REPI program. The REPI program is a Department of Defense program that was originally designed to help military bases deal with local environmental issues that are of concern to the military base. And not too long ago, they recently expanded that program to include fire risk mitigation. So we have a huge fire risk issue for our military bases here in El Paso County, and that's with the Air Force and Teller County. That's with the Air Force Academy, Cheyenne Mountain, and Fort Carson. So I brought this to the attention of Andy Gunning and the PPACG team. I know you were going to bring this up in your remarks, but now is perhaps a good time to do it. And we're going to eventually introduce the possibility of asking for a REPI program for our community that would bring in Department of Defense money that would be spent on Pike National Forest mechanical mitigation to reduce fire risk. If you will, kind of one of these opportunities to be responsible stewards for our own forests, to your point, Commissioner Stone. And again, it's even still not a local forest, it's still a federal forest, but when we push, maybe we can help our Pike National Forest get better funded than it is today to deal with this issue. So that is something we'll be bringing forward. And Andy, you might talk about it just a little bit more at this point.
Yeah.
Not being military, what does REPI stand for?
Yeah, I forget the acronym. I
Oh,
apologize.
come on up.
You don't
He-
know a military acronym?
No,
Paul
sorry.
Rochette may know. Come on up to the podium. Yeah, this is good timing. We're going to brief this at the end of the meeting, but let's get into it now, which is good. And we were thinking that the timing for this may not work because to submit an application under this REPI program that Paul described, I think September was the deadline, but we found some others. We've been digging into this hard and we have some other opportunities.
Paul Rochette, the military planning program manager, and I'm still doing research on this. And there's a lot of layers to the onion. Essentially, well, first of all, REPI, I believe it stands for Readiness and Environmental Protection Initiative. I'm not positive on that. REPI.
REPI. And it's Department of Defense funding.
It is. It's through the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation. And initially I thought, well, we discovered that there are other military installations using REPI funds for wildfire mitigation. And I spoke with the Utah National Guard, and they have been using REPI funds. They brought in about 17 million over the last 5 years. And I had read in a separate document, there'd be a September deadline. So I thought, well, we could get doing that. I've learned that I got a little too aggressive. It's really going to take a lot longer to put together this program. But I've been speaking more, learning about the REPI Sentinel Landscape Program, which is a very, very large scale approach. San Antonio's looking for a Sentinel program for 945,000 acres. So it's going to take a while to put this together. We're developing a wildfire working group under the JLS program, and we'll be bringing these issues forward. But essentially, they have to be submitted by local military installations, and it has to go through the installation process and then through Secretary Defense Office. And, there's a whole long process. But I think Commissioner Vanderwerf's comments are absolutely on target. We're looking at bringing in federal funds. It's just going to take us a little while to do it. So just thank you.
And I might just maybe talk a little bit about Oscar Martinez and his requirements for the Pike National Forest. He has identified in his planning 100,000 acres that he feels is critical for fire risk mechanical mitigation. He has only successfully been able to obtain from the federal government funding for 3,000 of those 100,000 acres. And then we kind of ran into this REPI program, and you're referring now to the REPI Sentinel program, where other communities are looking for funding to mitigate not 100,000 acres, but you said in one case, 900,000 acres. So this feels to me like there's an enormous amount of potential and a real serious possible opportunity to bring federal funds to the community to help deal with forest fire risk mitigation, to talk to Commissioner Stone's concerns about when it's our own fault, right, for pollution. This is an opportunity for that as well. And it is too late to try to get to an application in September. And I think in order for this to be successful, we should consider the idea of maybe pursuing an application next year at the next due date, which I presume would again be September, maybe.
Right.
And we need to work with our military partners, because it is our military partners that actually would submit the application. So we need to start those meetings and get us to a consensus about the possibility of submitting an application or asking our military partners to submit an application on behalf of themselves, but also on behalf of the community. Their value proposition for themselves is in forest fire risk mitigation for their mission. So that I think is really, really important. So this to me is something big and bold, and something that's kind of an appropriate consideration for PPACG, because it is a multi-county, multi-jurisdiction value proposition from this. So there's going to be more. We'll have conversations about this. And Councilmember Hengen.
Yeah, so I love this idea. Thank you. I think you're right, Commissioner Vanderwerf. And I think we need to participate whenever and wherever we can. I do want to make sure that folks know that the city of Colorado Springs has decided to do a retention on Tabor to create wildfire mitigation dollars and district, which will go ad infinitum. I mean, it's intended to go well into the future. And I would invite any of the organizations here representing governments to do the same. Because I think while we do need to go to the federal government, and we need to utilize all the funds that are available to address this. And I think when we show our own commitment, it makes it an even stronger case to get federal dollars. So I would invite that. I also appreciate Commissioner Stone's comments. And I think generally speaking, we do better holding others accountable when we hold ourselves accountable first. And blaming tends to create defensiveness and doesn't create cooperation. So I think that's the best approach. Thank you.
Yeah. Maybe I would just like to point out that what Council Member Hengen was speaking about is just not that we're going to retain funds, but we're going to present an opportunity to the voters to approve the city of Colorado Springs to retain the funds, to create a pool of money, which we will then use a percentage of year by year for fire mitigation throughout the city.
Sorry,
Yeah.
we explained it much better than
Yeah.
I knew the Tabor process. I just like the question. I wasn't quite following it. So, okay.
Yeah, and just 2 comments real quick. We've reached out to Councilmember Scorman. I understand he might be taking the lead with those conversations. So Paul and I have connected with him already. We're going to start talking about how to leverage local opportunities like that with some other federal opportunities that we're going to be pursuing. And despite REPI being due in just a few weeks in September and that not being viable right now, we did find another application potentially under another program that we might pursue for an October grant period that would let us do it basically a needs assessment and identify where the gaps are and come up with a real kind of strategic plan as far as how to approach our wildfire needs.
And just a couple more comments on the REPI Sentinel program. First of all, what I don't know vastly exceeds what I do at this point. But I do know that the REPI program talks about a local match, and I believe at this point it can include in kind, but if we did the Tabor retention, that would count. But I think already the dollars that are already being spent from non-federal sources will count as that match, but they also have the ability, if you can demonstrate the need, to reduce the match from 20% to all the way down to 0 if it was an extremely needy community. So they're really looking for kind of a multiplier effect from all of this. But the other point is that the application this year was pushed out to September because of COVID. Next year, it'll probably be, Ann, did you say June or July? July 30th, okay. Yeah, from the installations. And so there's a lot of work that has to be done once the installation says, yes, let's do this.
Right.
Then there's still a lot of work. So we really have to get something to starting up the wildfire mitigation working group as quickly as we can.
I imagine that I know that some of our military partners are online here today, which is great, but we should start a dialogue with them, and perhaps you have this in planning.
Beginning, yeah.
The beginning of it, a dialogue with them to see if there is a military partner that is willing to commit to submitting an application. My sense of it is, and of course we can have further conversations, but my sense of it is this community will get behind that application in very strong ways, and will help in whatever way we can to ensure that that application would be successful. And also to Councilmember Hengen's comments, I appreciate the city's consideration for creating a fund for fire risk mitigation. As you all may know, we announced on Friday the possible a dialogue with the community on behalf of the county for resetting our Tabor base. Fire funds are not a component of that at present. We'll continue a dialogue about that. I don't know if that will end up being added or not. But what we're proposing is roads and parks, with the preponderance on roads. And, the couching of that is, it has to go to the ballots, the ballot, the citizens have to approve it. And we do have 2 public hearings that will take place later this month with regard to that. So the citizens will have an opportunity to input that. But coming back to fires, we have an enormous amount of even if the city ends up doing that on your own, there's an enormous amount of partnership work. And I wanted to just express one thing for the board's awareness. So over the last couple of weeks, I've been twice to DC working on Space Command retention. But what I haven't had an opportunity to share with everybody is I was also there talking to Natural Resources Committee members in the House and Senate about an ask for 15 million for the Pike National Forest to get us past 3,000 acres of mechanical mitigation and get us further into the 100,000 acres. So there is action taking place on behalf of the county at present to try to get some more federal funding for Oscar. He's been doing what he's allowed to do, which is requesting through his channels additional funding, and he's not had much success with that. So we as a community can pursue that, through legislative action at the federal level. So for your awareness, I did speak to several people from natural resources committees in DC 2 weeks ago on this specific topic, asking specifically for $15 million for the Pike National Forest. And if there's others that would like to be part of that, I'd be happy to have that conversation. Other public agencies that are members of PPACG would love to have that conversation with you. Okay. All right, Councilmember Thompson.
So I believe it's a MAC, Military Affairs Council. Or do we attend those meetings? Because this to me would be a really good subject to bring up at the Military Affairs Council, because there are so many people, so many different relationships within that group.
I was thinking 2 groups. MAC wasn't one of them, but I sit in on I go to the area chiefs of staff meeting. So it's the chiefs of staff from each one of the installations. We get together each month. Was definitely going to bring it up with them because they're the operational people that run the bases, and that would be a great conversation for them to have. I know Paul is going to be going to the MAC meeting, so he could bring it up there as well. Yeah. I'm meeting with a separate group on a special item that we're going to talk about next on the agenda. I could bring it up with them as well tomorrow when I meet and get this on their radar. I'm sure they'll be supportive.
And for the county, Commissioner Williams is the liaison to the MAC and certainly can bring that up there. The city has a liaison to the MAC as well. And I am also, for me, I'm the liaison to the Defense Mission Task Force, DMTF. and they're the ones that were sponsoring the ADC meeting. And so they definitely, from time to time, talk about fire risk mitigation issues. So I'll be engaging DMTF on that conversation. Our next meeting is actually, I think, on
This coming
tomorrow.
Tuesday.
Yeah, this coming Tuesday.
Yeah.
So, so we'll have a conversation about that in DMTF. I am certain they'll get behind this as well. Everybody knows it's a big risk issue here in our community. So that, to that point, and maybe to conclude this conversation, there's a lot of activity going on. There's a lot of opportunity for partnerships. There's a lot of opportunity for conversation and reaching kind of, if you will, a regional strategy proffered perhaps through PPACG, and everybody will have their own contribution to that. And I think that's a very healthy conversation for us to have.
And I don't want to get people too excited about 945,000 acres because the land around San Antonio is very different than here.
I appreciate that point.
All right.
All right. Well, that really started on item 6A and went into a broad conversation, but it was worthwhile, I thought. Yeah. Are there any other comments or information updates with regard to 6A? All right, hearing none, let's move on to 6B, update on discussions regarding a possible regional intergovernmental support agreement.
Okay, Mr. Chair, and I'll take that and I'll try to be super brief with it, but wanted to update the board on conversations we've been having with our military installations on a different topic altogether. Some of you might be familiar with IGSAs, intergovernmental support agreements, which are typically, they've been kind of single purpose agreements between a military installation and a local jurisdiction for that local jurisdiction to provide service on that installation. Could be things like road paving or snow removal or traffic signal maintenance, things like that. We've been having conversations. We've been sort of convening it through PPACG, but doesn't mean that we need to run it. But we've been convening conversations with our Air Force installations and a handful of our local jurisdictions, really just City of Colorado Springs, El Paso County, and the City of Fountain for now. But this could include any jurisdiction within our region that wants to be part of it. But looking at more of a regional approach to how we would craft an IGSA, if you will, with multiple installations. So it's more of a blanket regional approach with multiple installations, multiple jurisdictions that might be able to provide service on a local installation. We know about a model in San Antonio. We've been referenced a few times today, but they've got an awesome model where there's Joint Base San Antonio, which is the constellation of all the different military installations in that region. They've got a partnership with the Alamo Area Council of Governments, our sister agency in the San Antonio region, where they've got a similar regional blanket IGSA in place for a 10-year period. They're finding that it saves the military installations a lot of money, a lot of time when they've got to provide infrastructure and other kinds of support services on base. It's potentially a revenue generator for the local jurisdiction that's providing that service. It also generates a little bit of revenue, but not much for the COG that coordinates that activity. So we've been having these conversations the past couple of months. I've got another conversation with the Air Force installations tomorrow, along with our local jurisdictions. But we've been digging into some of the specifics to see if there's enough here for us to maybe want to take the next step and try to craft something like this. Like I said, it could be PPACG that's coordinating it and the coordinating body for an IGSA, or it could be another entity if another entity wants to step forward, but they haven't yet. So I bring it up now because it came up indirectly last month when the board adopted a budget amendment. We actually asked for some additional budget capacity if we were to go after a grant this calendar year to help put together an IGSA. So, and that was approved as part of the budget amendment, but we haven't submitted the grant application yet, but there's an open application through DOLA, the State Department of Local Affairs, where they could help pay for part of our effort to put together an agreement like this. My thought is that we can't just do it, Paul and I and the local jurisdictions on our own time. We really need to hire somebody that understands the procurement process that the feds and the installations have to go through, get some legal support and so forth. So in my mind, thinking that like $100,000 effort probably over the next year, if we were going to take this next step. If we were going to take that step, we can have half of that paid for by the state DOLA grant. So there's a little bit of a timing issue here where that grant is actually due in September. If we were going to go down this path, that may be too soon, and our jurisdictions and our installations may say we're not quite ready yet, but I'll know more tomorrow with another meeting that we have. They may come back and say, you know, let's move forward. There's enough for us to kind of develop here and take the next step. So that's why I wanted to bring it to you today and just brief you on it and hear if you have any feedback or suggestions.
Yeah, I'll just make one additional point. I'm a big supporter of us pursuing this to a logical conclusion, which is either this looks great and we need to go there, or we find something that is, a blockage that ends up not making sense. I was first introduced to this idea on a Colorado Springs chamber visit to San Antonio. San Antonio, and this I think was in 2018. San Antonio has put these IGSAs to great use, and it's been a successful model for them down there. And there's real value generation for both parties if the program is run right. And I'll emphasize that it has to be run right for it to work. The bases can benefit from basically having local support contractors that help them with whatever is going on their bases. And it's usually kind of direct base support, mowing lawns, fixing utilities, things like that. Because what they would do is they would take advantage of existing local government contracts and just simply do addendums to those contracts and utilize those local contracts to perform those services on the military bases, where the local jurisdictions already have the contract in place and they have sufficient scope to add additional contract work on there, but it would be done on behalf of the military base, and then the military base would pay that bill. Often the military bases have other options, and in some cases, and sometimes in many cases, those other options, like using an existing GSA contract or something like this, is actually more expensive for them than using a local contract that's already been negotiated and is under contract from a local jurisdiction. So the value for the bases is potentially a less expensive approach for them to do some work on the base. And then our value from this activity is we keep that activity local with our local vendors. Then we have greater opportunities for retaining the spending of those dollars with local companies. So that's our value side of the proposition. So I think we'll continue the dialogue with it.
We'll continue the dialogue, and I kind of left out probably the most important benefit that it does have. I mean, it is potentially a revenue generator, and it helps local small business as well that otherwise maybe couldn't compete on, say, Fort Carson or Peterson Air Force Base, because they can contract with the local jurisdiction and they then provide the service on base. So it helps the local economy. But really the biggest benefit, it strengthens the bond between the military installations and the community, and that makes us more BRAC proof. It sets us up for more mission expansion and retaining the existing missions we have, and so forth. And that's really kind of what we're understanding is what really the biggest benefit of doing something like this would be.
Great, thank you. Are there any comments or questions with regard to this idea or this concept? All right, hearing none. Is there anything else in 6B that you need to bring up, Andy? No? Let's go ahead and proceed then for 6C. This is local dues for the 2022 PPACG budget.
Good morning, Casey Partridge, Finance Manager, PPACG. Bringing forward to you for information items, it'll be brought back future meetings with our budget. We are working on our budget for 2022, and we're asking for a 10% increase in dues, which is approximately $45,800. The last increase was that we requested and was approved was 6 years ago. In your packet, attached schedule shows the growth over the last 6 years with the number of grants as well as total grants received. Our growth has been tied to our mission and strategic plan and has been based on the needs of our communities and member governments. Our current programs have seen a greater need and have been more active in helping our member governments with programs, including our transportation department. We've been able to operate with our current dues structure as we have not had an environmental staff person for most of the year. And as we've heard in earlier discussions, this is a critical position, especially with new regulations on the horizon. We are working on hiring that position in the coming months. And that is an area that we work to find grants, but a lot of that money comes directly out of member dues. As of the end of the month in your financials that you saw earlier, ending in June 30th, PPACG had allocated and used 64% of our dues so far this year. The attached spreadsheet also shows how we've spent dues in the last year and up at the top of the schedule. There are a number of different expenses that are directly charged to dues, including the state lobbyist the board approved a couple of years ago. That was $20,000. This contract is up for negotiation and we are expecting an increase in that. Any lobbying activity by the staff, meeting food, staff recognition, and community events are also areas that are not able to be charged to grants and have to come directly out of dues. We've also had increases in expense over the last 6 years, including staff expenses, building costs, and contractor costs. A lot of those are able to be charged to grants, but again, most of our grants require a match. And as you can see on the spreadsheet that I showed you, those matches range from 10% to 25%. So for our 10% match, for every dollar we spend in dues, we get $9 back in our grants. For our transportation department, that's a 17.21% grant match requirement. So for every dollar we spend in dues, we get $4.81 in grant funding. For our AAA program, some of our AAA program requires a 25% match. And so for every dollar we have in dues, we get $3 back in grant funding for the AAA program. Any questions?
All right, are there any questions with regard to this topic? Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Yes, just to clarify, since we haven't discussed this since 2016, how are those dues broken up between the entities?
Well, the dues are allocated based upon the assessed value of the prior year for each of the, and we get those off the abstracts off the county website. And so those, it's 20% to, 50% for the counties and 50% for each of the cities. And then within those, it's allocated based upon the assessed value that we get off. That we get off the abstract, it's all of the property values.
In that municipality or
Yeah.
area?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've started pulling those from each of the communities for, and most of those are dated as of November 25th, 2020 are the valuation dates that come off, like I said, the county website, assessor's office website. And so then it's allocated based upon that. So for like monument, you get about 2.54% of the 50% for the municipalities. And this schedule is handed out next month when we do the normal presentation on what board's budget costs.
Thank you.
So, and so like, again, it varies. The increase is, from 3% for Rama all the way up to $20,000 for El Paso County, City of Colorado Springs. That's how it's allocated. That's the increase. The 45,000 increase, so.
Okay, so are there any other questions about this at this point? So PPACG is offering, this dues increase, and it would be important for the members of this board to go back to your own jurisdictions and start a conversation with regard to that and see, if you would be willing to support that, or if you have some issues about supporting it, so that we can kind of find out where we stand as a board with respect to that. And if you don't have exact clarity on exactly what the exact dollar figure would be as far as increases, please talk to the PPACG staff to get that exact number so you can have that conversation. Yes.
One thing we suggested at the workshop on Friday is I'll share this out with the city, county managers and their finance staff, so they know what they paid for this year and what the projected increase looks like for 2022 ballpark at this point, until we get the exact figures together. But we'll get them looped in as well, just to see if they have any concerns or suggestions.
And what normally happens is in January, if this passes the budget, what happens is we send out the invoices to the city, county staff in January of 2022. So.
And all of the members will have their own budget processing that they'll have to go through. So if they agree to that, you're going to have to work with your budget process to get the numbers changed. So this will probably take us a little time, but we've got the topic introduced, and now we can have the conversation.
I know, I just told our staff to, it was being discussed and could be at 10%, and they can just figure that number, but it is, I'm sorry. Can you tell me again, for every dollar PPACG spends, tell me that again, because you said it really fast.
I'm sorry. For every dollar, it depends on what the match is required.
Right.
On a 10% match, for every dollar that we spend, we get $9 back.
Yeah.
So, it, depends on what the grant is. Transportation grant, it has a 17.21% required match. Now, we do try to get as much in-kind match as we can for a lot of our programs, but one of the areas that we've really been, with COVID, we've not had as many volunteers in the office and things like that, and so we've not been able to get that match for especially our AAA program. We also, if we have local support for some of our programs, we use that as match. But there's always things that are coming up that require more match. We just talked about the fire mitigation, possibly getting a grant, match may be required on that. So, we're always looking at what we can and can't do because we're funded with our dues for match. So.
Very good. Are there any last questions on this topic at this point? Okay, hearing none. Thank you very much. We'll just get this process started and see if we get to a consensus or not. Okay, very good. Let's move on to 6D. And this is evaluation of the executive director. I think this is yeah. Okay, great.
Good morning, Barb Watson, HR Manager, PPACG. I'm presenting this item remotely. In your board packet, there is a memorandum with the timeline for the evaluation of the executive director. And I just wanted to briefly run through that and answer any questions anybody may have. Starting in August, Employers Council will coordinate the completion of the 360-degree evaluation. That will be sent to employees, board members, and community partners that have been identified. There's 8 to 10 of them. And then the report of the results will be shared with the executive committee. And if there's any concern, that will be shared with the full board. At the October board meeting, the evaluation form will be sent to board members and it will also be in the packet. And then I will request that they be completed and returned to me by the end of October so that I can have time to compile the results to present at the November board meeting. And the board will vote to go into closed executive session to discuss the progress with Andy Gunning and any goals that need to be established for 2020 will also be discussed. The salary will be discussed. Salary increase for 2022 will be proposed, and possibly a 2021 bonus will also be discussed, but no action will be taken in closed executive session. So between November and December, I compile a memorandum of the results of the November board meeting, and the board chair approves it. It will be presented at the December meeting, and then the board in open session will approve of the memo. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions from anybody in the room here or online? This is basically an expression of the timeline and the schedule on how we will go forward with our evaluation of our executive director.
I would just like to request that people return it. Some years we get a lot returned and some years we don't get very many returned. I think to get a full picture of the entire region, we need everybody to, and even if you haven't been on the board very long, you probably met Andy, you talked with them or whatever, just even if they're just a few short comments, just please return your evaluation.
I appreciate those comments from our vice chair, and I concur with that. And I know we all have busy schedules and busy lives, but it is important that we get everybody's input because that allows us really to have a broad representation from all of our municipalities and counties. Okay. Any other comments on this? I see some smiles. I'm not quite sure what the smiles are for, but go ahead.
Sorry, I just noticed an uncooperating seeing eye dog.
Oh, okay. All right. So I guess we have one objection, which is one of our friends, the seeing-eye dog, Puma. All right, very good.
You should
Thank you
turn it
very
in with
much.
his little, Yolanda, you should turn it in with his paw print on the bottom or something, with
There
his
you go.
opinion on it.
All right, let's go ahead then. I think we're done with our information items. Let's proceed to our reports. And we're starting off with our military installation reports, and let's see who we have online, but just feel free to speak up to see who we've got here. Do you know who we've got online, Andy?
I saw Ron Gevry earlier.
Yeah, Ron, are you willing, able to speak on behalf of Peterson and Schriever?
This is Ron Everett. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you. I've just got one item to bring to the board's attention. On the 26th of July, Lieutenant General Whiting, the commander of Space Operations Command, presided over the renaming of Peterson, Schriever, and Cheyenne Mountain. So Peterson and Schriever are now Space Force bases officially, and Cheyenne Mountain is officially a Space Force station. If there are no questions, that's the only update I've got for this meeting. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ron. And I know that several of us actually attended that ceremony, and it was a fantastic ceremony. And really, from my point of view, that was really a big deal. Really a key component of, robusting and growing the USS Space Force. But I used to work at Schriever, and never in my wildest dreams, and also at Peterson, never in my wildest dreams that I think they would ultimately be called a Space Force base. It never even dawned on me. So it was really just very notable to me personally to see that.
Absolutely.
Any other comments?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No other comments for me. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you very much. Who else do we have from our military partners? Do we have anybody else? If that's the full list that's online there, I don't think there is anyone else. All right. Oh, there we go. I've got a little bit more. So we have Garrison Public Affairs representative, I think. Did I see that?
Good morning. This is Julie Scott. I'm just kind of listening in and taking notes for some of our PA folks who are unable to be here.
Well, great. Thank you for doing that. I'm sure you'll relay back to the team some of the work we were doing today, and thanks for listening in. All right. I think that might be it. And then from 7B through 7F, the minutes are included for your review. And let's go to 7G, the CDOT monthly update.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chair and the board. Shane Ferguson with Region 2 CDOT. This update would be fairly brief, but I will start with Park County and US 285. The current bridge replacement project, which is south of Fairplay, has been put on hold due to the I-70 closure at Glenwood Canyon. Just part of the increased traffic and detouring around that 70 mudslide is impacting the US 285. And so we're currently evaluating next steps for that project in particular. We're running close to the end of a doable construction season for that part of our state where the temperatures continue to drop significantly here this fall. And so which really impacts asphalt placement and progression in that project. And so we're looking at suspending that project until the spring, just with the unknowns associated with I-70 corridor. Moving on to Wilkerson Pass. That project is underway on US 24 and still progressing and is anticipated to be completed this fall. Locally, regarding the within Colorado Springs and El Paso County area, the MAMSIP project, we have successfully negotiated with the contractor on a couple of the components on I-25. So the rehab pieces, as well as the Academy bridges at I-25. We expect to see that work to begin this September. We're currently under the contracting process now and getting that in place. The other components at Charter Oaks Ranch Road and State Highway 94, we're anticipating negotiations later this month with the contractor. And then the South Academy component will be this fall. Other projects to highlight, the ramp resurfacing project along I-25, as well as on State Highway 115. The asphalt placement is complete. We are currently finishing up the restriping of that project. The bridge replacement project out east on US 24 between Calhan and Peyton is progressing well. We will have an on-site detour in place here in the next couple of weeks, where we are staging and building that new box structure where we replace the existing old bridge on that piece of the corridor. We expect to be completed with that project this fall as well. And then lastly, as many are aware, the Research and Powers interchange is progressing well, and we'll continue to see activities for the next year or so. So with that, that is the update. Richard is on annual leave today. So if you have any questions for me, I'll do my best to answer.
All right. Are there any questions for Shane Ferguson? I've got a couple, but I'll reserve those.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Shane, this is Councilman Dave Donaldson. Just on the I-70 closure, I believe it's opened back up to single lane, or that's going to happen in the next day or two.
Correct.
You kind of touched on this. Do you think it'll be opened back up to full traffic before winter, comes in and no more work can be done?
Yeah, so my suspicions, and this is my suspicions just on what I've seen, is that it will likely be a single lane opening each direction. The full opening, I doubt we'll see anytime soon, just because the structural damage that I've seen on the bridges. And so unfortunately, I believe we're going to have single lane each direction would be, and this again, this is my assumption based on what I've read and seen, just single lane opening on I-70.
And so I guess just common sense wise, we can foresee that could have an impact on the ski resorts out there through the winter.
I would extrapolate that would be a possibility. Yes, sir.
All right. Thanks.
Okay, great. Any other questions? All right, just a couple of quick things for me. The Colorado Springs Airport runway closure is now finished, the reconstruction of that runway, and this is a transportation issue in aviation that is now reopened, and I think that's a great progress. Isn't necessarily directly a CDOT project, because I think federal funds were used for it predominantly, but it is reopened and it's back in use. And then I have a quick question for Shane with regard to the Mesa that is just south of Cheyenne Mountain State Park. So El Paso County had a land use quasi-judicial hearing yesterday regarding rezoning of this area. And there was some controversy in the meeting, but the commissioners did vote to permit the developer to initiate that process for rezoning. But the important part for CDOT is this area, being just south of Cheyenne Mountain State Park, has two access roads to Highway 115. This is Pawnee Road and Cherokee Drive. Both of these intersections, I think, are within this area of consideration for Highway 115 work that we've talked about fairly frequently. But I wanted to make sure that CDOT was aware, while there's still plenty to do, there has to be a final plat approval and several other things. So there's going to be several more board meetings, but should those conclude in such a way that the development will continue, there will be increased use of these two roads. And there will be, there's even a possibility of a light requirement on Pawnee Road. And I just wanted CDOT, Shane and you particular, to be aware of this. If you don't know much about the development, we should get you some of the hearing information that took place yesterday on this topic.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you for that collaboration. I will look into see what information we have locally, but we'll be reaching out to El Paso County to find out more on these access locations.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think those are two roads that are under consideration for improvements from CDOT on the Highway 115 project that I know that you're considering.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, great. Any other questions for CDOT at this point? Okay, hearing none, let's go forward with this 7H, the stack update.
Morning. This is Holly. So yes, I am still here. So staff has not met since the last time we met as a board of directors. I know the transportation committee met, so it will be interesting to go through the minutes and talk about the updates this Friday morning when we meet. I will be attending virtually, and so I just wanted to let, well, Eric knows, so that lets Andy and John know, just to make sure if we have any virtual issues. See that that room is not quite as good virtually as it is as PPACG has done. I did want to highlight, and I don't know if I sent an email to John or Andy, the sessions we've had, very, very valuable, very well attended on transportation funding. And that was kind of the report I wanted to give out. There's a second session on Monday. And Andy, maybe you could say what time that is and the topics. So that was the only report I had, was for the second session on Monday, because it's been very, very valuable to listen to.
Super. Yes, thank you, Commissioner. I was going to mention that in my report, so good timing. So we have our second of 2 transportation/infrastructure workshops. Come on up, John. Second one is this coming Monday, the 16th at 8:30, from 8:30 till 10 or so. It's a hybrid. You can come here in our conference room, or you can Zoom in. We'll make sure people have the link. First session was really, really good. And I think overall, this has turned out to be just brilliant timing. So thank you, Commissioner and Councilmember Thompson and John, for having the thought that we should pull these together with a lot of discussion with the federal infrastructure bill. We're not going to take a position as a body, but I mean, if that does happen, there's a lot of opportunities to fund a lot of needs that we have in our region. And I'll just mention before John takes over, with the second meeting we have coming up, we're going to talk about transportation, electrification, or EV opportunities. If communities are planning for EV infrastructure, what the different opportunities to tap in funding at the state and federal level might be. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, we'll have an update from CDOT on Front Range Passenger Rail. And a third item that we're adding to the agenda, and it was sort of at the request by the town of Monument. I know there was a discussion of this water project by the county commissioners yesterday, but we're going to have some space on the agenda to talk about regional water infrastructure loop system that's being discussed in northern El Paso County, town of Monument, Cherokee Metro District, and a bunch of other metro districts and other cities and towns are talking about the need for a renewable water project, basically. So we're going to have that on the agenda as well. And again, with the notion that there's federal opportunities potentially that are going to be available, and we should be ready to position ourselves as a region to support big projects like that. We've been pushing hard to make sure we get some staff from our federal delegation to our upcoming work session as well. And I think we got a commitment from the 3 offices, to Senate and Congressman Lamborn's office, to have some representatives here for the meeting as well, so we can get them up to speed on what some of our needs are.
Yeah, actually, you didn't leave much for me. All I'll say is if time permitting, we will maybe touch on a little bit of the federal funding equity. And let's see if I can give you a 30-second thing. Back in 2000, we had the census. That was the census that was the basis of the federal funding formulas, as well as lane miles, et cetera. When I believe it was Safety Lou was passed in 2009, instead of all of the different funding formulas, they basically just crossed all that out with a crayon and said, whatever you got in 2009, that's what you're going to get for the remainder of this bill. And that has remained in place up until today. So fast growing states like Colorado, you're receiving your funding based on formulas that are using 2000 census data. So Colorado, help me out, is it North Carolina or South Carolina? South Carolina and Texas, the 3 of us states have all become donors to the extent that, again, the formulas have sort of weaned us out. So we are working with other Western states, the Intermountain West, and the Maricopa Association of Governments in Phoenix is a good partner in this. It helps that Andy and I came from Arizona, so we were able to chat with them. And they have worked with Congressman Stanton who used to be Mayor Stanton of, I believe Paradise Valley, but I could be wrong. And their congressional delegation, Senator Kelly and others, to have a study bill lumped into the infrastructure bill. So that if we have time permitting on Monday, we'll touch on that. Just again, a lot of times people say, well, we're not getting our fair share. And sometimes I'll argue with you and I'll say, well, define us and define fair and that sort of thing. But the federal issue, it's definitely hands down, no doubt about it. We are not getting our fair share, as well as a lot of other Western states because of this change. And so that is something that hopefully we'll be able to work on to get addressed, because the pie ain't getting any bigger, and other states are eating our piece.
Yeah, I saw that Senator Cruz from Texas signed on to this study bill as well. Senator Hickenlooper, I believe, has signed on. So it's one of those things, it's a nonpartisan issue. It's an equity issue where we're falling further and further behind in our fast growing Western states. So we got to fix it. So, and if we don't ask, it's never going to get fixed. So we think now might be the time to try to address it. So we'll talk more about that.
Yeah, it's the little brother syndrome, right? You're growing up, oh, you're too small, you're too small, you're too small. Hey, I'm bigger now. Well, now it's based on age and seniority, and we were here first, right? Like, wait a minute, you're changing the rules. So it's an issue.
Commissioner Stone?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. John, the first workshop, I had a conflict, was not able to attend. Since that there was a Zoom option, was that recorded where we could go back and review the information shared?
Yes, we actually sent out an email with the Zoom video, as well as the 3 different presentations. So we sent it out to people that were signed up. So Jessica, we trouble you to just go ahead and send it out to the broader board distribution.
Great.
It was literally the morning after the 1,700-page federal infrastructure bill had dropped. So our first speaker, it was up all night. I think he had an hour of sleep and gave us a briefing on what he understood was in the bill. So that was very helpful.
And we have a very good relationship with the National Association of Regional Councils, Eric Zimmerman. So as this bill progresses, I think now that the Senate has passed theirs, again, I'm no expert on these things, but I believe when we have a House version, a Senate version, there's the reconciliation between the two. And as that process moves forward, we'll start actually getting some hard details, and we can ask Eric to come back. And if the timing works out, maybe even a board meeting here. However, he would have a hard time standing under the 10 minutes. So we might want to just schedule him for right after a board meeting or something like that. I'm sorry.
And actually, I appreciate the concept of reconciliation, because we have the DC fly-in in late September, the chamber. And I will be taking an opportunity to talk to members on the Hill the day after the DC fly-in. Again, that's about dealing with reconciliation issues for Space Command retention. But if there is a discrepancy between House and Senate versions of this as well, we could take up that topic and try to fight to get that reconciled in a favorable way. So let's just keep in mind as we kind of work on these issues that several of our public agencies that are members of PPACG have opportunities to go to DC and fight for things that are meaningful to us. So, okay, thank you. Yes.
We had a fantastic attendance, I thought, at that meeting. There was like 25, 30. I wanted to say 50, but I didn't want to exaggerate. Okay. So it was great to see that many people at the meeting. Obviously, it was a topic that, interested a lot of people, and I hope we have that good of attendance. And if you couldn't see it, yeah, look at it online, because it was a lot of information in a short amount of time. Very, very overwhelming, really. So, yeah.
Great. Outstanding. I see that Commissioner Williams has her hand up, so please go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So in conclusion, I just thought I would say thank you, everybody, for your continued transportation efforts. I think that pretty much everything I wanted to cover was included in there, and hopefully next month I will be there in person. So thank you.
What an outstanding comment to tie this one up in a bow and conclude this topic.
Commissioner Williams, can we continue to pass along the request to potentially rearrange those meetings so that we get to the meat of the issues a little sooner, rather than spending an hour with people just introducing themselves and talking a little bit?
Oh, yes, I'll try and bring that up. I will call Aaron at CDOT and Herman and ask them if they can look into it. there's a few people at CDOT that you can just call and say, hey, can you kind of encourage him to do this instead? Because I think at the stack meetings, we would like to see, there's a lot of old timers and a lot of transportation geeks. I might be in the geek status. And, but the region updates take sometimes an hour and an hour and a half. And we really need to stick on policy issues. It's fun to listen to all of us tell about our projects and how they're doing, but I think anything more than a 3-minute update is probably a little bit too much because we have some serious policy issues. So we are trying to make a push to go ahead and get straight to the policy on those meetings first and do updates at the end.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other comments on this item, 7H, the stack? All right, hearing none, let's proceed to 7I, the executive director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm just going to mention one item in the interest of time. I was going to recommend, I've run this by the board, the executive committee of the board already, but was going to suggest that we try to schedule a board retreat of our board members. And really kind of for two purposes, over the past year and a half, since we've sort of been in and now sort of out of a pandemic, but still sort of in it, we've had 7 new board members come on of our 20-member board, or 21 if you include the transportation commissioner, but 7 new members from Colorado Springs, Teller County, Woodland Park, Green Mountain Falls, a couple other jurisdictions. And I think it would help, I think, us to help kind of build some rapport as far as how we work together and what our role is, and a brief on what our kind of key priorities are right now. But it would also give us direction for 2022 when we put our budget together, when we put our work plan priorities together. I think it could help us in a number of different areas. I know it's going to be really, really hard to find maybe a 4-hour half-day time slot with everybody's wickedly busy schedules, but was aiming for maybe second half of September or sometime in October that we might try to pull this off. So far, got a tentative thumbs up from the executive committee members, and just wanted to put it out to the other board members and see if you have any thoughts or comments there.
So any thoughts or comments on that? Yes, Councilmember Hengen.
Yeah, it seems like worthy of an effort to connect, and it's enough people, new people. The challenge is it's going to be scheduled, I think, but I'm willing to
Yep.
do it. And if we maybe even move it out a little bit further, we might be more successful in getting something on the calendar.
I know that the executive committee is in support of it. We discussed it, and then we asked Andy to bring it up to the broader board. If there's no objection, and I don't think I'm hearing any, let's go ahead and try and schedule it. And I think Nancy's point is well taken. The hard part will be finding the time to get most of us there. But we just have to do the best we can. So, but I think an opportunity for us to kind of just get to know each other a little bit better since we've had some turnover will be really, really valuable. Okay, I think that's all on that. Any other items, Andy? All right, let's go around the horn. If any member has any additional announcements at this point. Is there anybody online that wishes to bring something up and make an announcement at this point? Okay, hearing none online. Is yes, Commissioner Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to make everybody aware, August 21st, the Rally will be roaring into Woodland Park with several thousand of your favorite motorcycle riders. So expect some traffic issues up Highway 24 that morning and potentially that afternoon. Please be safe. Keep your eyes peeled for those on 2 wheels as well as those on 4 legs. And that is all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, very good. Any other member announcements?
Yeah, Fountain is really excited to have our Fountain Fall Festival back again on Labor Day, parade at 10 a.m. and then it ends at Metcalf Park. Kind of hang out until around 2 o'clock, vendors, food trucks and all that kind of just fun community stuff for everybody to get out and have a fun day. So come on
Great.
down, and parking is free.
Parking is free. Yes, Councilmember Donaldson.
Yeah, this is for everyone that's an American, which I think is all of us. This Saturday, the 14th, is the 76th anniversary of Victory over Japan Day, unofficially the end of World War II. And our World War II veterans are, they're all like all of us. We're all getting older. So if you have someone who's from that group or someone you can go to and meet, I would recommend thanking them for their service. 420,000 service men and some women gave their lives in World War II, and 1,500 civilians. So I think we should express our appreciation again this year. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And I had an uncle that was a tail gunner in a B-36 operating in the Pacific Theater during World War II. And their commitment to the United States was incredible. Thank you for that. Any other announcements? All right, hearing none, let's go ahead to meeting schedule. We don't really need to discuss this much. Just as a recollection, last page of the packet is a complete list of different meetings. Looks like we've got, I think it's 7 meetings listed on that packet for September. And just as a reminder, our next PPACG Board of Directors meetings will be 9 o'clock, 8 September, typical time. And we'll have the same format, a hybrid of both online and in person. Any other meeting schedule announcements that we need to make? All right, last opportunity for any final comments from anybody. All right, hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your great support for this meeting. We had some great conversations today. Look forward to continuing that as we move forward. Thank you so much.